Round two of the mad scientist, crazy cobbler putting together another parts gun. We'll show that later. Everything we pulled together, bits and bobbles from boxes and bags. Birthday present from some birthday money from my father. So I have the original FrankenRooger in a Victor Titan stock, and this will be going in that as well. The only thing missing from this will be the OEM receiver, which is Cerakoted in Marine Corps red, which is in another gun, which will be harvested out of there. So for this build, we're going to go with the Titan Victor stock. Really like this one from the other one, very rigid. The other one also will harvest out the spike anchor that will go in here. And you might want to read about the spike anchor. I actually can put that in the links in the notes after you fit your receiver in here. There's a hole in here with a hardened steel spike that turns down into the back, comes out on the other side on this flat here, and then you give it a half twist or more if you like, and that pointy spike makes a mark and actually goes into the aluminum by just a little bit into the receiver and pushes it forward and down into the stock more tight. So you have an attachment point from the action screw in the front and the spike anchor in the back. If you'll notice, these have a nice little pillar right here that your action screw goes through, so you're not crushing it against plastic, you're crushing it against aluminum technically. If we look at all the fitments in here, brass inserts, they've really gone to a great extent to build this right. Quick disconnect points, both sides, front and back. This is not gray in color, as though it might look so on the list. On the camera. It's a flat dark earth, somewhere between brown and green, really nice color. Depending on the light overhead, you'll see the difference. But yeah, it's not gray, flat dark earth. Pillar, brass inserts for all attachments. There's enough attachments here to put a rather lengthy rail on. They actually have their own, which fits on here, which I have on another gun. It's a really nice Arca rail. I'm not sure if I'm going to put something like that on there, or if I'm going to put just a short Picatinny rail version on here. You can get a Picatinny bipod for less money than you can get a bipod that will have a Arca clamp on it. The other thing, this will come with a little screw. If you can see that other hole right down in there, it's a little take-up screw. It has a brass tip you can put in there, and then when you seat your chassis or your action back in there, your barreled action, that little screw that you can drive up in there will take out any play that might be in there just from fitment of an older Ruger 1022 OEM trigger kit, trigger pack, and receiver. Really nice, extremely durable, extremely stiff. I've used this in one like this in NRL 22 competitions while my Bergara is out getting a new barrel put on it. And it's functioned exceedingly well. So in here on the back, it has length of pull spacers that you can put in. The cool thing about it is they include specific screws that are used for whatever length of adjustment you're putting in there. So you're not running a large screw the whole way through, you're using a screw of the exact appropriate size in there. Again, all brass fittings wherever you're running a screw inside. Along with that, what else we have in here? The universal cheek rests, which will fit on the back, fit down over the top of this. You can adjust your riser, your cheek riser, 3 different sections, so you can choose the height you need or want. The other cool thing about that is, for just a little bit extra, you can get a kit where there's a plastic template in here which allows you to appropriately drill holes in this ridge on the back and insert these brass inserts into the stock. And again, you have another attachment point where good hard screws are going into brass fittings, so I elected to do that. You can see in here the little screw I was telling you about, a grub screw with a brass tip that goes up inside the back to help take up any play in the back of the receiver, which is common with a lot of aftermarket stocks and sometimes a Ruger stock with fitment. So this is the Victor Titan stock, and once we start putting this all together, you'll see that. Thanks for the birthday gift, Dad. It'll be a awesome looking thing when we're done with all these spare parts back here. And maybe we'll have to name this one the FrankenRooger Bob Edition. So what else do we have here? Let's take a quick survey of what else is going on. So here we have an OEM trigger housing, which we will build a trigger inside of. Now, one thing we'll do, this is going to pull. This one I think is just around 6 pounds, 5 and change. I'll have to look it up. But we're going to take this. This is the stock trigger, or stock hammer. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And we're going to polish it with Dremel tool and some Flitz paste. And this one isn't completely finished yet, but you can see the difference in the surfaces. Including the back end here will be polished even more, close to a mirror polish. This is the point where when your hammer fires, the bolt returning back hits here and cocks your hammer. So we want as minimal of a resistance as here as possible, so the smoother the better, since we don't really lubricate this stuff a lot. So we're going to polish these things out, polish them out very well. The only thing that we might do after that then is decide which trigger we're putting in. I have a stock trigger here, and I have the tandem cross trigger for the 1022, the flat blade. Not sure which we'll do yet, but this will also receive some polishing. You can see where I've started polishing the surfaces of this, including this section right down in here. Any place these parts engage and work together will be polished. We're not taking any metal off. We're not modifying any pieces, but we're merely polishing them to decrease the friction in those pieces. And just a little bit of polish, a little bit of effort with your Dremel tool, and we've been able to get a great difference. And we'll show you what that is when we do some trigger pulls later, after this is done. On the sear, this is going to connect down over the back of this inside the trigger mechanism. So any place something touches and needs to engage or rub against each other, those pieces are polished. You can see started on this one, got a ways to go to polish that all out, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Dremel tool, some cheap Dremel polishing bits off of Amazon, a tube of Flitz, and you can really make a difference. The other thing we'll do, if we use the standard trigger, you may know that in the back of the trigger guard, a little hole back here in the back, you can see that hole. What goes in there is this plunger and spring. And what this does is it returns your trigger. So when you fire the trigger, it pushes the trigger back out. Squeeze it, pushes the trigger back out to the return. From Kid Innovative Design, you can buy springs of different weights, down to 1 3/4 pounds. You know, even though it is elemental in returning your trigger, you're still pushing against that spring as part of the resistance with the trigger pull. So if a 1 3/4 pound spring will push it back out, then you can go lower. The kit also comes with various springs of different push weights. That way, if a 1 3/4 doesn't, you can bounce up to 2. That may be what you need. It all depends on the trigger itself. The tandem cross flat blade trigger might go in there. I have it on one of the other 22s. Has a really nice over travel adjustment grub screw in there. It uses this particular spring off of the side of the trigger here as your return spring, as your trigger return. You don't have that, deletes that spring in the trigger guard, and this works really well, nice and smooth. I'm not sure which one I'm using yet, but in that, the sear and the disconnector will still be used. For that, I have some new sear springs to put in there, so that'll be good. Have some new cross pins to hold the trigger pack into the receiver, and then some of the mag release cross pins to replace. These are great pins. They have a little ball bearing spring detent in them, so they don't fall out. I hate the historical pins, which I have a box of here. They might look nice, and they go in easy, but they fall out like mad. In this is going to be the tandem cross bolt. I'm not sure what the black finish, nitride, etc. But this is a nice, smooth, polished surface. And when we fire the gun and the round pushes that bolt back, it's this part that cocks that hammer. So smooth surfaces against smooth surfaces are the best way to go to decrease overall felt impact, to decrease the abrasive nature of metal slamming and rubbing together, and to ensure everything resets rather well. And the top of this will go the tandem cross skeletonized charging handle. Again, all things from the pegboard on the wall in my gun workroom. Because I'm using an original OEM receiver, I'm going to go with the, I believe this is Tactical Innovations V-Block, to make sure that, and I have noticed that the barrel in that particular receiver has a little bit of movement. When we put a scope on that, we know that it's obviously not as the right size and tolerance as it was probably at manufacture, because there's some barrel droop in that. And the only way to get rid of that is to get a new receiver. Well, we're not doing that. We're using the receiver we already have, but Tactical Innovations makes a V-block that inserts as you normally would put the V-block in, with this little dot pointing up. I don't know that we can see it here very well, or the dot is exposed. Let me see if I can get in here. If you look at this V-block, it looks normal. And here we have a grub screw in there. And what this grub screw does is you can turn this, once you get the V-block turned down where it's snug, not tightening, but just so everything is where it should be. And the instructions will tell you how to run this hardened grub screw up, and that grub screw will put pressure against the mortise or the cut in the barrel here and help prevent or decrease some of that variance in barrel sag or barrel droop, especially with an old receiver. So we're going to put it in. Don't know that we'll need it, but we're not sure. So it's going to be there. In that receiver is going to go the 16 1/4 inch FJ Feddersen barrel. I'll be posting a video on that for, we took a look down the bore before it's been shot or cleaned. This has some specific technology to the way they design the inside of the bore and their rifling. There's already a video out about that. I'll direct you to both of those once we get this up and running. So 16.25 inch, 0.92 inch full contour bull barrel, not threaded. Once it's in the receiver, on top of that is going to go an EGW rail. I ordered these for the guns I built for my sons and realized, well, did not realize until it was too late, I had already purchased one for one of those. I ended up with an extra, so I stuck it in the box of things for the future. Luckily, we have that. The other thing is the rings we're going to use. Actually, the scope that's going on there, and let me think, what is the scope that's going to go on there? It is currently, where is it currently? It is actually, and I do believe it's right here. It is. I didn't think to bring it to the table. This is going to be, and remember, we are, there's a lot of people that poo-poo a lot of stuff. You know, not everybody has the budget for Minox and, oh, you name them, Valdotta, some other ones that are just gorgeous, beautiful operational scopes. So we're going with this Discovery Optic, which has been sitting around for a bit. Actually, I had originally put it on my son's gun, and then when I switched out some stuff from the NRL 22 rifle I had, I put that scope on his gun, and then, well, one of theirs, there's three of them, and then went with this particular scope, which is the high definition Gen 2, 5-36, 56 millimeter bell on the front, first focal plane. It works really well. It's clear. It has great light gathering. I've noticed no aberrations within the shooting that I typically do. Really large ocular lens. Fairly easy to get your eye box in there. Nice big turrets, especially if you have older vision and you're dialing in a hurry. Not quite as loud and defined as an Arkin or some others, but they are still, you're not going to overrun a setting. Multiple settings on the illumination. The parallax wheel is a little stiff yet, but we haven't used this a lot. We've been shooting fixed distances, so one set, it's just been staying there, so it doesn't move around as much as it would with NRL or PRO, PRS, I mean. Good turrets, lock well. So this is the scope that will go on the top of this when it's all said and done. It's already got the Discovery rings on. I mean, they're inexpensive, yeah, or cheap, whatever you want to call it. $35 for matched, polished, board, lapped rings. I mean, come on. I can get caught up in the name, or I can buy what I have money for at the time to fit the absolute need. So when we look at this, nice birthday present in the Victor Titan stock. We have everything else on the shelf other than additional birthday present money was acquiring the FJ Feddersen barrel. And I was, look at it. I think once we start shooting this and you see some of the groups involved, you're going to be pretty well excited about giving one a try for the money. The price point is great. Ruger OEM receiver will go on it. Marine Corps red, the tandem cross bolt with the skeletonized charging handle. And just because that's red and the receiver's red, I might just be forced to go with the flat face trigger as well. Once we start polishing everything up and it's finished, we'll build this and put it back together. I'll tell you what the new pull weight on that is. The only other thing that, let's see, probably isn't on the table, that probably should be, is the bolt hold open. Now, for those of you that know, if you have a bolt hold open and it doesn't automatically release, you use this as a pointer here. This little tab right here is what keeps it from moving. So when you lock it back and you push the pin up, the handle up to lock that in place, hold your bolt open, and you pull your charging handle back on a traditional Ruger, you have to push this up again, you're letting it drop down into this slot. That's how that works. You can either buy one that has that removed, or you can use your Dremel tool and enlarge that hole yourself. Then when this locks back, the pin's in here, and when you pull that back, it'll drop forward again. So think about it. This is something else you could do on your own. There are videos on YouTube. It'll show you the radius and where to drill or to grind, including a tiny little tab right here you can barely see on the camera. At the bottom of that, see that little tiny point that sticks up? That needs to be rounded out also. That'll give you a good bolt release. The only other thing I'm debating right now is putting a different plunger, a mag plunger in here. I might get one from Kid. I've got some in the box here that are OEM, but Kid has a tougher spring that helps you hold that magazine in just a little bit tighter. It keeps it in battery better, so you have less chances or less opportunities for bad feeds. And then, of course, boxes of mag releases, you name it, there are pieces everywhere. Extra ejectors, so boxes and bags of bobbles and bits, 2 birthday presents, and everything off the shelf purchased in the past. We'll let you see what it comes out like, and then we'll start shooting it, and hopefully this additional FrankenRooger does a good job for almost no money. We'll see you later. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know. I know some will complain, tell me the scope is junk, get something different, but you're being budget-minded, building the best you can. I think you'll be surprised with what we come up with. So, results and processes all along the way. Stay tuned.